Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Kurt here. Kurt, you're the co-founder, CEO of Owlet. You've really been on a mission to help a lot of people gain really hospital level, just the best level of care for their kids, for their babies when they're born. And you created a device that was really first of its kind in the space, and wasn't easy to get the approvals necessary to really bring it to market, but you were able to, and you've been able to help a lot of parents really have a great upbringing for their kids, and really their own journeys in parenthood has been greatly enhanced by the product you've created. And you've gotten some great recognition for that. I think Forbes labeled you guys at a point the next billion-dollar company, and you've gotten a lot of reach and traction there. So I'm excited to have you here, Kurt, to get into your story.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'd love to just maybe share a little bit more about the product and give a quick overview and then dive in. Is that all right?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we make this little wearable health monitor that goes around your baby's foot and tracks their heart rate, oxygen levels, sleep quality, temperature, and then sends all that information to your phone so you have it at your fingertips. We started in 2016. We're based in Salt Lake City, Utah. We've now monitored over 2 million babies. We have one of the world's largest data sets of infant health. And I think one of the things that is really rewarding is we've had over 1,000 families write into us and say this product helped save our baby's life. We love that. Millions of parents have slept better because of it. We had parents come into the office and we said, draw your life before Owlet and draw your life after Owlet. And they all drew the same after Owlet picture. It was them laying down. It's like a stick figure. They're laying down and Z's are coming out of their head. And they all said, I just get deeper sleep knowing that Owlet's up all night so that I don't have to be. So we're excited about that. We do have the world's first FDA-cleared health monitor for babies at home. We're building on that, and yeah, want to make an impact and help parents give care at home. I think I've always been an entrepreneur. When I was a kid, I convinced my dad to turn the back half of our yard into a paintball course, and I would sell paint and video these tournaments that I'd host. And I was like a pretty nerdy kid in junior high, but all the cool kids would come over to these paintball tournaments that I'd said. I love building things. I love creating things. I started a flooring company when I was in college to help pay my way through college. So done a lot of that. And then, my dad always pushed me to get an engineering degree and then go into business. That was kind of like his version of a safe, successful route for me. So I got into engineering, really loved it. I love tinkering. I love building things. But there was a club on campus called Student Innovator of the Year, and they'd give you $400 to develop a prototype of your idea. And my wife and I were talking about starting our family. This is right before our oldest was born. She's had 3 heart surgeries. So when she was a baby, they didn't detect it. They ended up doing life-saving heart surgery. And the doctor was telling us that our kids might have the same thing. So I just remember thinking okay, what exists out there for parents? And we used this $400 grant from the Student Innovator of the Year competition to build our first Owlet prototype. It was just this little sock. I bought some LED lights from Radio Shack, and that's kind of where it all began. So I've always been, I think, an entrepreneur. This was a company that I started out of college, out of a personal problem that we had, and it's now I'm in year 12 for me, and it's kind of what I've dedicated my life to. I think one of the turning points for me is I had a lot of ideas, and it was I had a moment of clarity where I'm okay, let's say you spend 10 to 15 years on a company that you build or a product that you create. I only get 2 or 3 of those in my life, and then I'm at retirement age, and so there's this moment of clarity where it was I want to do something that's meaningful, that actually makes a difference and helps people. And so when we created the idea for Owlet, I'm yeah, that's something I could spend my life on, and I believe it can make a huge difference. So
That's great that it's very mission driven like that and solves a real problem. So, Kurt, how did the specific idea for the way the device would be made come about? What went into the thought processes there?
do you mean how the design for the product?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, so I learned about this technology that they use in hospitals. My wife's a nurse. I had a friend who's a nurse. I learned about this technology they use. It's called pulse oximetry. It's that little red light that they put on your finger when you go to the hospital. This is before the Apple Watch used it and stuff. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Through light, you can tell how well somebody's breathing. My wife has had multiple cases where because the patient was being monitored, they were able to get into the room on time, do have a stroke team address the patient that was having a stroke. And so it's like, that's incredible that these little sensors can give caregivers a heads up on what the patient needs. Babies spend 50% of their time away from the parent. And in the hospital, they put the sensor on the baby's foot. That's one of the most common locations, because they kind of grab, they've got a little bit of dexterity, they grab it. Nobody wants electronics on the forehead. That's another spot that they've developed sensors. So the foot became the place to put the sensor. Babies wiggle a lot. Probably the most common question we got is like, can they wiggle out of that? Like socks fall off babies' feet all the time. But we created this little wrap that went around the baby's foot, velcroed down, so it stayed secure. The sensors are placed in the same spot that they're placed in the hospital, but we made it super intuitive so that a parent with zero background or training can easily put it on. It works every time. The other big challenge we had to overcome was false alarms. These hospital monitors are designed for like a nurse who's on standby at all times and can go check on the patient. If baby's sleeping, parents want to be sleeping. So they don't want to be woken up at night unless it's really, really important. And so we actually used multiple sensors. We used a temperature sensor, the pulse oximeter, and an accelerometer to make sure that the readings we're getting at all times are high quality readings. And we're able to filter out most of the false alarms due to motion, poor placement, cold feet, and be more intelligent about how we share the information with parents. That's been a huge part of our secret sauce, is just the right information at the right time. Don't wake parents up unless they need to check. And we do. If there's a clinically significant event where the heart rate's dropped or the oxygen's dropped, we do pick that up. We do notify parents, and it's helped save lives.
Mm-hmm. So how did you initially handle when you were scaling, trying to get the product out there much more, and then the FDA decided that you couldn't sell it anymore? Like, can you just kind of share more of that story and like how you handled that situation?
Yeah, right around when we launched the product, I guess right before we launched the product, the FDA came out with their draft general wellness guidance. So, like Fitbit had launched their wrist wearable before the FDA had decided what to do with wearables, right? And so President Obama, it's famous, like he was wearing a Fitbit before the FDA had even decided if that was legal or not, or if it was a medical device or not. So they came out with this draft guidance for general wellness, and it was for devices like Fitbit that track and monitor somebody's well-being for the purpose of improving their life and their health. And specific call-outs were, sleep and sleep monitoring and things like that. And so we thought, okay, Fitbit, Apple Watch, they're doing the same thing as Owlet, same parameters, pulse oximeters. And so we decided to classify in that category. And we sold the product in that category for 6 years and monitored over 1 million babies. So we had a lot of interaction with the FDA during that time. It felt like we had kind of established this category as a wellness category. We made sure not to make any medical device claims. And simultaneously, we'd started to work on submissions to the FDA because long-term, we wanted it to be a medical device. We wanted to be able to make claims around life-saving technology and how the product functioned and things like that. And so we started to work on that. We went public through a SPAC in 2021. It was like a month after we went public. We got a warning letter from the FDA saying, hey, this now needs to be categorized as a medical device. It needs to be a class 2 medical device. And the alarms specifically were considered the medical aspects to the product. And it became a whole journey. I'm not going to go into like all the details, but that was a shocking day. It almost bankrupted the company. We paused sales for a quarter. We didn't have to do a recall, but we did have to take the inventory that was sitting on shelf at retail. And we negotiated with the FDA to give us a period of time to keep a version of the product on the market that was tracking the baby's health and sleep, but didn't have any diagnostic alarms. So it had, sleep prompts and notifications for parents to go check on baby, but not anything that would diagnose low oxygen or low heart rate. That was really challenging because those are the features that parents want the most with the product. So it took us a while to rebuild. It took us about a year to get back into all of our retail stores. We had to rebuild all of our registry, all of the reviews. But one of the coolest things through that is that parents, like our customers, really stood by the company through that whole process. A lot of companies would have had, hundreds of thousands of devices returned. We didn't know, whatever. We had the opposite. We had a mom start a change.org campaign where she said, "Hey, this is wrong. The FDA should not be blocking parents from getting this technology." 200,000 parents signed that petition. We had a lot of good press at the time talking about how it's safe. There wasn't a safety or an accuracy issue. It was just a classification issue. Um, and I think that was really cool. There was kind of almost like a black market where people were like, don't delete the app from your phone because it's not available. They're like selling their iPhones. And I think that's because Owlet had invested for years and years in creating a really great product that parents love. Over the 2 years that it took us to get FDA clearance, we didn't make any major changes to the product that was there. I mean, it was a really good product. We just had to show, uh, 4,000 pages of documentation that was safe and accurate and could meet the device standards. So.
Mm-hmm. So how did you shift it from the FDA doesn't want you to have this product out because of a classification issue to really working with the FDA? And I think you even did some co-development with them too. Like how did it shift like that?
Yeah, I think part of it was us shifting our mentality from trying to defend ourselves and our category to deciding like, okay, the FDA is going to be a strategic partner for this category. They have to be, this is an important area for pediatric health. And so we want to partner with them. To their credit, I think they did the same thing and they said, okay, this category exists. It's important to parents. How do we support it? And I think when I think both parties made that commitment, things really started to work well. I feel like communication was really good back and forth. Um, we were able to use a lot of our real world data to show that the product was appropriate for the home and that it was safe and accurate. And ultimately we created this category together. We got a de novo approval, which means first of its kind. So I have to I have to give a lot of credit to the FDA for being forward thinking on helping us establish the category.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's great. It's great that you were able to really work with them and instead of just butting heads, and it probably helped save a lot of money too and helped and expedite what you were building.
Yeah, and I think it's part of our mission. Like we want to be the leaders in pediatric health in the home. And so I think is, just realizing like, okay, we can fight about some of the nuances of the classification, or we can just fully embrace this and get to the other side, and we'll be stronger as a business on the other side, which has been the case. I think we created the category 7 years ago when we launched, but we've really established it in the last year with these clearances, and we've seen that our sales have increased substantially just by virtue of being an FDA-cleared monitor.
Wow. So you got recognition from Forbes. I think you were Forbes 30 under 30. You got that recognition. You also got other recognition from press from them. How impactful, Kurt, was that for what you were building and gaining other customers? Like, did it really have a trust factor that it added to your brand overall? Like, how did it help?
I've always said, and Val might disagree with me on this, but I've always said that I don't think the business press has been super helpful for our business, if that makes sense. Like it's a little different than like if you're selling electric vehicles and you're covered in Forbes, like you're also being covered with your customers, that want, sort of. So I think that's worked really well for EVs and other types of technology. For us, like we got picked up on CNBC, we got picked up in, Forbes, a lot of these outlets. The publication that has the biggest impact for us is like People Magazine. It's like the parent influencer kind of market, influencers on TikTok and Instagram. That's where I think new parents are really connecting and figuring out what's best for baby. And they're not paying attention to these like Time Magazine, New York Times headlines as much. So I would say it's that recognition has been more just like fun to have for me personally, like a cool thing. And it's helped us with fundraising too, to be able to kind of point to that and share some of that credibility, I think has been good. But for our category specifically, our consumers aren't reading that. that type of news for the most part.
But the fundraising it's been helpful for.
Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. So what kind of went into Kurt making the device like accurate for all different types of babies and different there's different aspects to that, but how did you make it accurate across the spectrum?
I think it's a good question. One of the limitations of pulse oximetry, or I guess just oversights by those who have created it, is most of the testing's been done on white subjects, right? So there wasn't traditionally a lot of thought put into various skin tones, and so the FDA has taken a much harder look at that over the past. We have always tested our product across various skin tones. We've done it in different countries and different locations. Um, Even before we had the FDA requirements, it was just important to our brand. Like our vision is every baby, so it needs to work for every family and every baby. And so when the FDA asked us to do extra testing, we had to do like 3 different times, show it in 3 different ways that this is super accurate across a variety of skin tones and in hospital environments and home environments. The product performed phenomenally well because we had put a lot of effort up front into designing the product because we care about that. We want that. Like if you ask anybody at Owlet, what's the vision? It's every baby. It's really simple. Every baby should have access to this. It doesn't matter where you live or what the background is or any of that. So I'm really proud of that. I think that's, it's like the future bends towards truth. And I think that the truth there is that, there should be equity for every family.
Mm-hmm. So what new developments overall are you like most excited about in this space? Like you helped pioneer the category into what it is today by the approvals that you've gotten, but what are some new developments in technology that you think will be most applicable to helping families and helping parents?
So I remember as a first time dad, my son had a fever and like a cold. And, I went through more training to get a driver's license than I did to become a dad. So, stressed. I don't really know if it was something serious or not. His temperature was spiking, really seemed to have trouble breathing. Um, my wife's a nurse, so she's actually a lot more calm. She's the steady hand. But we were worried. We were both worried about it. And this is, Owlet was still in beta mode. He was like our beta tester, so we weren't quite ready to just rely on the sock yet. And there wasn't really any way to know if this was serious or not. It was like 10 p.m. We took him into the hospital. We spent about 4 hours there. It cost like $1,500. And the end result was like, he's okay. he just has a cold. He's just kind of sick. And I think about that experience a lot for a couple reasons. One, I would do that 100 times if one of the 100 times he really needed care and was serious. And that's about what the occurrence rate is. If you look at ER visits or visits, it's at 97% of the time it's treatment release, baby's fine. It's very different than other times. But it's extremely inefficient. The rates of infant mortality, specifically SUIDs, have not dropped in over 25 years. The rates of RSV have only gone up. So we're using our healthcare system as a really efficient way to triage health at home, just triage health. And I really believe with data and tools and technology, Owlet can build a platform that helps parents do that at home much more effectively. If your baby's oxygen's at 98%, they're not retracting when they're breathing, a lot of those babies could just stay and be monitored at home. And we identify when a baby's gotten serious, usually before the parents even know that the oxygen's down in the 70s, their heart rate's elevated. Those babies are really off baseline. And it's hard to triage that at home. So I think Owlet will become the platform that helps enable those types of questions. Is this normal or not? And really improves the efficiency and the outcomes for care. And I think that's where we're going to focus. You're going to see clinical data, publications coming out regularly from Owlet. You're going to see us launching new software in our subscription service that helps parents better care at home. We're going to solve sleep duration. We're going to be one of the companies that really helps parents get more sleep, not only because they have peace of mind, but also because we're helping unlock, sleep for their baby. And those are things I'm really excited about. I think it'll solve some fundamental problems in healthcare.
Definitely sounds good. I think multiple that you mentioned do need to be solved, especially the sleep one. I know a lot of parents that do want that figured out. And um, so, how overall has if you could even just share, Kurt, like some of these stories that you've experienced from that your product, how your products impacted people. Like, could you share some of the stories of how Owlets just really improved the lives of some of these kids?
Yeah, absolutely. So the very first story that we had, this was really cool because it was a friend of mine from college, and they had lost their oldest child to SIDS. And so I think this was their third, and they'd heard about Owlet, and they were like, okay, we need access to that. We were doing beta testing, so we let them borrow the or use the product and test with us. And and I remember it was like a couple weeks later, I got a call from him. He's like, "Hey, had a bunch of these low oxygen alarms. What should I do?" And I'm like, "Dude, you're a beta tester. We're having a lot. We're improving the product." And he said, "Well," and he kind of explained, a little bit more and said, "Can you just check?" So we sent the data to our medical advisor. He said that baby needs to go to the hospital right away. And they took her in. They did an overnight sleep study, and they found out that she just could not regulate her breathing during sleep. She would drop down 50 times at night into the 60s in oxygen. Her brain hadn't developed enough to regulate breathing. It was some sort of like central hypopnea or apnea um, problem that she had. She ended up being on oxygen for 3 years until she could finally pass a sleep study and she could just regulate her breathing and her oxygen levels at night. So that was really cool. We did this big Nursery of Hope event where we planted trees in memory of babies that had passed away. And they came to that event and planted a tree for their child that had passed away. And she was there, and she was like a 5-year-old running around. That was so rewarding. We've had a lot of cases. One of the most common things is that parents are exhausted. They've lost, on aggregate, 100 nights of sleep that first year. So they're absolutely exhausted. They're worried about the child, and a lot of times moms will fall asleep while nursing. They roll over on the baby. They're just right, and so that's the number one kind of contributor to SUIDs is accidental suffocation. And so Owlet has had hundreds of cases where we've notified parents that baby was suffocating, and all it takes is the parent to wake up, move, or move a blanket or whatever it is, some unsafe sleep situation. It's so simple. It's crazy to me that this is still happening because it's such a simple fix. Parents just need to be aware that that's happening. And then we've had a lot of cases where, and we published with Cleveland Clinic, one of the largest studies ever done on infant cardiac issues, but baby's heart rate will get into a tachyarrhythmia, supraventricular tachycardia, where the heart's beating at 200 to 300 beats per minute, and it's just the heart's rhythm is off, and it's really unhealthy for the child. It's dangerous, and it's really hard to know that it's happening. And so we've probably had over 100 cases where it's detected that the baby's heart went into a tachyarrhythmia. And at first, parents are like, everything seems fine. They reset the monitor. We get 2 or 3 more alarms like that. And then they take them into the hospital, and the doctors immediately, there's a lot of different ways that they get the heart rate back into the right zone. But then the kids need to go on medication for a little while to help them regulate their heart. So that's another example of stories that we get that they're incredible. So
Those are incredible. So without the product, maybe they wouldn't have been around.
Yeah, I mean, we'd like to think that we've had an impact there. And with over 2 million babies monitored, we know that Owlet's had an impact.
So just the last question I have, Kurt. At this point now, you've done a lot in this space. What do you hope to accomplish next? What are some of your short-term and long-term goals?
I think 2 things. One, we believe that just like every baby goes home with a car seat and every baby gets a breast pump reimbursed by insurance, parents should, regardless of income or status, should have access to tools like Owlet and health monitoring at home. So we are working. We believe that eventually every baby should get this reimbursed by insurance. So we're working on the studies and sort of a pathway to make that happen. And then we also want to become the platform that bridges the gap between the hospital and the home. So we call it Owlet Care for Every Baby is our vision.
Well, I appreciate you coming on, Kurt, and sharing your story. I'm definitely excited to see how this platform continues to really come to life and to grow, and that the impact that you guys will continue to have with many different kids. So thanks for coming on and sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Thanks for hearing it.